All right, let's get started with today's deep dive. We're taking a look at Toyota's 2023 annual report, specifically the Form 20F.
Definitely a fascinating look under the hood of, well, one of the giants in the automotive world, right?
Absolutely. And there's a lot to uncover. I mean, they're navigating a rapidly changing industry. We're going to break down their business segments,
They're
see
financials.
how they're planning to create value for shareholders.
Yeah, and I think what's going to be really interesting is how they're tackling this whole shift in the industry.
Yeah.
Like everyone's talking electrification, right?
Yeah.
How are they adapting to that?
Right. Okay, so let's start with the basics. They're business segments. Most people think Toyota, they think cars, but their report actually shows a pretty diverse portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the automotive production segment, that's their core.
Right.
But they also have a whole financial services arm.
Okay.
And then there's this category they call other operations, which is pretty interesting.
What falls under that?
So we're talking housing, telecommunications. They're even dabbling in biotechnology.
Wow. That's a lot more than just cars.
Yeah. It's a bit of a surprise, right?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's unpack the automotive production segment first. I mean, that's got to be their bread and butter.
Makes sense to start there.
But how are they, I mean, everyone's talking about electric vehicles, right?
Right.
How are they dealing with that?
So what they're doing is what they call a multi-pathway strategy for carbon neutrality. Basically, they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Oh,
It's not just battery electric vehicles, the BEVs.
okay.
They're also looking at hybrid electric vehicles, the HEVs,
Yeah.
plug-in hybrids, PHEVs.
Right.
And then this is where it gets kind of interesting, fuel cell electric vehicles, FCEVs.
Okay, now those run on hydrogen, right?
Yeah, hydrogen.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty bold move, I think.
It is. I mean, how come they're going down that road?
It's risky, but there's a lot of potential upside. The infrastructure's not quite there yet. Hydrogen fueling stations and all that.
Right.
But FCEVs, they have some advantages. Like they refuel really quickly, like a gas car.
Okay.
And they have a much longer range than most BEVs, at least right now. And get this, Toyota's even got a hydrogen-powered Corolla.
Really?
Yeah, they're racing it. Motorsports, they're using that to sort of, test the technology and improve it.
So they're really hedging their bets.
Exactly, exploring all these different avenues to a greener future.
But they've also had some hiccups along the way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, thinking about those issues with their subsidiaries, Daihatsu and Hino Motors.
Yeah, the certification problems,
Yeah.
that was definitely a setback. I think it really highlighted the need for them to strengthen their internal controls.
Especially in those subsidiaries.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Making sure everything's running smoothly, preventing stuff like that from happening again.
Right, because that can really erode shareholder trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially for a company with, Toyota's global reach.
Yeah. Speaking of shareholders, let's move on to their financial performance. Their annual report, it shows increased sales revenue,
Yeah, which is great, right?
but also increased costs.
Yeah. That seems to be a trend, huh?
Yeah.
So the weaker Japanese yen, that actually helped boost their exports.
Okay.
But at the same time, material costs have been going up.
Yeah.
Which is, a problem everyone's facing.
It is. So how are they tackling that?
Well, they're focusing on cost reduction efforts, especially in manufacturing and logistics, trying to streamline things.
Makes sense. It's like they're walking this tightrope,
Yeah,
managing those costs, but also having to invest for the future.
you got it. And the report does mention some pretty significant R&D spending.
Yeah. What are they focusing on there?
Battery technology, for one.
Okay.
Software is another big area. That's the future of mobility.
It is. All right. So let's dive into some of the key numbers from their financials. Their gross profit margin, it took a hit.
Yeah, because of those rising material costs we talked about.
Right. But their operating profit margin, it remained pretty healthy.
Yeah, I mean that indicates that they're managing their overall expenses pretty well, considering all the external pressures.
Right. What about their cash position?
Strong cash and cash equivalents. That gives them a lot of flexibility, to maneuver.
Yeah.
But they also have a significant amount of debt,
Okay.
which they've been using to fund expansion investments.
So they're leveraging that debt for growth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can be a bit of a double-edged sword, right?
Fair. What about their cash flow statement? Any insights there?
Well, their cash flow from operations, that's robust, really healthy sign. Means their core business is generating plenty of cash.
That's good.
Yeah. And they're investing a lot in property, plant, and equipment.
Okay.
So that shows a commitment to future growth.
Right.
And they're not forgetting about returning cash to shareholders either. Dividends, share buybacks.
Right, right. And speaking of shareholder value, they mentioned a dividend increase in their report.
Yeah, up to 180 per share.
Wow. Okay.
It's a pretty big jump from the previous year. Shows they're serious about rewarding investors.
All right. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Looking at Toyota's diverse business segments.
From cars to biotech, who knew?
Right. And then diving into their financial performance, their strengths, their challenges.
And how they're navigating all these industry trends, managing costs, investing strategically for growth.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It is. And in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to take an even closer look at how they're creating that shareholder value.
Yeah.
And really assess their prospects for the future.
So we're back, still digging into this Toyota annual report.
Right. We've talked business segments. We've gone through the financials.
Yep. Now let's really zoom in on how they're trying to create value for shareholders.
And their report really highlights this two-pronged approach, right? Dividends and share buybacks.
Okay, let's start with those dividends. What's the latest there?
Well, they announced an increase.
Oh.
Bringing it to 180 per share. That's a pretty significant jump from last year.
Yeah, I mean, for shareholders, that's got to be good news.
Definitely a good sign.
But is it sustainable? I mean, can they keep, increasing the dividend like this going forward?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we got to look at their financial performance, obviously,
Right.
and their plans for future investments. Now, they are generating strong cash flow from operations right now.
We saw that.
So that definitely supports, those dividend payments.
Okay. But they're also, they're pouring money into new technology, expanding into new markets. Does that not put a strain on things?
Oh, absolutely. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
They have to invest for growth to stay competitive, but at the same time, got to keep those shareholders happy, right? Those steady dividends. And their report, it seems like they're really aiming for this sustainable dividend policy, one that balances both of those competing priorities.
So it's not just like they're throwing cash at shareholders.
No. There's a strategy here.
Okay. What about share buybacks then? How do those fit into the whole picture?
Well, share buybacks, that's another way to return value to shareholders, right?
Sorry?
Basically, by repurchasing their own shares, they're reducing the number of outstanding shares.
Right.
Which in turn can boost earnings per share. And that increases the value of the remaining shares.
Right. So it's like shrinking the pie, but each slice gets bigger.
Exactly.
How much have they spent on buybacks like recently?
Well, the report, it shows they've been pretty active, spending a considerable amount, actually, to reduce the number of outstanding shares. So that suggests they believe their stock is undervalued.
Okay. Interesting. So they're using both dividends and buybacks to reward those shareholders.
That's right.
But these actions, it also says something about their confidence in the future.
For sure. If they weren't confident about, generating profits and growing the business, they wouldn't be doing this.
Right.
They'd be holding onto that cash, saving for a rainy day.
It makes sense.
Okay.
Let's shift gears a little bit here. Assess Toyota's business, moving forward. We've seen their strengths. Strong brand, global reach,
diverse business segments, as we've discussed,
and solid financials.
Yeah.
But they're also facing some pretty serious challenges, right?
Oh, of course. The automotive industry, it's transforming.
It is. Electrification, autonomous driving, connected vehicles,
It's a whole new ballgame.
It is. And the competition is fierce.
Mm-hmm. Lots of new players coming in, especially in that EV space.
Yeah. So how well positioned is Toyota, to really navigate all of this?
Well, I think they have a lot going for them.
Okay.
They've been investing heavily in these new technologies. Battery electric vehicles.
Right.
Fuel cell vehicles.
Right.
Autonomous driving systems. And they're expanding their presence in emerging markets.
Right.
And looking at new business models like mobility as a service.
So they're not just sitting still.
No, definitely not. They're adapting.
But what about those setbacks we talked about, like those certification issues?
Right.
Could those come back to bite them?
I mean, it's a possibility. I think those incidents, they were a reminder that even, a company like Toyota, they're not immune to making mistakes.
Right.
But they've taken steps
Okay.
to strengthen those internal controls, improve oversight, especially in those subsidiaries. I think the key is to learn from those mistakes
Right.
and prevent them from happening again.
All right. It seems like they're taking it seriously.
Yeah.
But then there's also these external challenges, right? I
Yeah.
mean, raising material costs, supply chain issues, geopolitical uncertainty. I mean, it's
Oh, absolutely. All factors they have to manage.
yeah,
Their ability to control costs, diversify their supply chain, and adapt to these changing market conditions. I mean, that's going to be crucial for them moving forward.
right. It
Yeah.
really does feel like Toyota is at this crossroads.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
I mean, they have a lot of potential,
Tons.
but these challenges are real. So,
Mhm.
I mean, what's your overall assessment of their prospects?
Well, I'm optimistic. I think they're well positioned. They've got a strong foundation,
Yeah.
a clear vision for the future, and they're willing to adapt. But they got to execute that strategy, manage those risks carefully,
Right.
and keep innovating,
Yeah.
to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah. So it's a wait and see kind of thing.
I guess so.
Yeah.
But their actions so far, I mean, it does seem like they're taking the right steps.
Yeah. To secure that successful future.
That's the hope.
Okay. So back again with our Toyota deep dive. I mean, we've covered a lot.
Yeah, really dug into their business, how they're making money, what they're planning for the years ahead.
Right. But now I want to kind of shift gears and talk about sustainability. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Toyota, they have this reputation for being environmentally conscious, right?
Yeah.
But their annual report, it shows they're taking a really comprehensive approach. It's more than just cutting emissions.
It is.
So break it down for me. What are like the key elements of their sustainability strategy?
Well, for one, they've set some pretty ambitious goals
Okay.
for reducing those carbon emissions
Okay.
across their whole value chain. I'm talking manufacturing, logistics, even the end of life of their vehicles,
So like the whole life cycle.
the whole shebang. They're also really focusing on water conservation, waste reduction, responsible sourcing for materials.
So like a truly holistic approach.
Yeah, thinking about their impact at every single stage.
Yeah. And then the report, it actually highlights some pretty impressive progress, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like significant reductions in water usage per vehicle.
Yeah, they've made some big strides there.
And they're using more recycled materials in the manufacturing process.
Yeah, it's not just about doing less harm, right?
Hmm.
It's about actually doing more good.
Yeah. And they're involved in all these initiatives, right?
Hmm.
To support biodiversity,
Mm-hmm.
promote renewable energy, even help communities adapt to climate change.
It's pretty impressive.
It is. It
Yeah.
really seems like sustainability is like baked into their corporate culture.
Yeah, it's not just lip service.
But beyond the environmental stuff, their strategy also covers social responsibility.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about the planet, it's about people too.
Right. So what are they doing on that front?
Well, they're committed to creating a more diverse and inclusive workplace,
Okay.
upholding human rights throughout their supply chain, and contributing to the communities where they operate.
Right.
So, promoting gender equality, supporting employee well-being. They've got all these philanthropic initiatives going on.
So it's really this comprehensive approach, touching on the environmental, social, and governance factors.
The ESG trifecta.
Right.
That's becoming more and more important to investors these days.
It is, and they're being transparent about it.
Yeah, which is
Reporting their progress on these initiatives.
builds trust, accountability.
Yeah, they're walking the walk.
Not just talking the talk.
All right. Well, we've covered a ton of ground in this Toyota deep dive. We saw how they're adapting to a changing industry, managing their financials, planning for the future. I mean, it's clear they're a company in motion, right?
Yeah, definitely not standing still.
Facing challenges, but staying true to their values.
I think that's a good takeaway.
It is, and it's a pretty fascinating case study, right? How this global giant can balance profitability with sustainability,
For sure.
innovation with responsibility.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see, as they move forward, how that strategy evolves, what kind of impact they have on, the future of mobility and all that.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us on this Toyota deep dive. We always encourage our listeners to keep exploring, keep researching.
Yeah, don't just take our word for it.
Exactly.
Dig in.
And until next time, keep learning.
And stay curious.